Claudia, a middle-aged woman with a sharp sense of style and an even sharper instinct for recognizing brilliance, was intrigued by the glimpses of James' art she'd seen during his brief exchange with Mr. Whitman. She decided to follow James discreetly. James stopped by a small community center where he'd arranged a modest display of his work. It was a stark contrast to the grandeur of Whitman Gallery, folding tables with canvases propped up in dim lighting, but it was here that Claudia saw the full scope of his talent. Each painting told a story: a young girl dancing in the rain, a family gathering around a table, a man standing defiantly against a storm. The emotions leapt off the canvas, raw and unfiltered. Claudia was captivated. Without revealing her identity, Claudia introduced herself to James and expressed interest in purchasing several pieces. Though skeptical, James agreed, grateful that someone appreciated his work. Claudia left with 3 of his paintings, knowing she had found a gem that the art world was yet to recognize. As James packed up his remaining pieces that night, he had no idea that his life was about to change. Claudia Reynolds was about to make his art the talk of the town, and James Carter would soon be a name on everyone's lips. The rise of James Carter. Recognition begins. Ms. Claudia Reynolds, armed with her extensive network of art critics, collectors, and gallery owners, set her plan into motion. She organized a private viewing at her luxurious Manhattan penthouse, inviting only the most influential names in the art world. The attendees, accustomed to seeing the works of established artists, were intrigued when Claudia unveiled James Carter's paintings. Each piece struck a chord, evoking awe and deep emotion. One critic described his work as a symphony of resilience and humanity, painted in vivid hues. Another compared him to modern masters like Jean-Michel Basquiat and Jacob Lawrence, hailing James as a voice of his generation. Word spread like wildfire. Within weeks, James' name was on the lips of every art enthusiast. Prominent galleries began requesting his work, and his pieces, which he once sold for a few $100s, now fetched tens of thousands. James, though overwhelmed, remained humble. He worked tirelessly in his small studio, creating more pieces that reflected his journey and the stories of people like him, often overlooked but brimming with untapped potential. Global fame. The tipping point came when one of James' paintings was auctioned at Sotheby's. The piece, titled Rising from Ashes, was a hauntingly beautiful portrayal of a phoenix soaring above a cityscape. It sold for $1.2 million, shattering expectations and cementing James' place as a rising star in the art world. Soon, James' work was being exhibited in galleries and museums across the globe. Paris, London, Tokyo, and Dubai all clamored to host his shows. His art was not just admired but studied, with critics dissecting the layers of meaning in each brushstroke. With his newfound wealth and influence, James decided to create something meaningful. He opened his own gallery, Carter's Canvas, in a historic building in Harlem. The gallery was more than just a space to display art, it became a sanctuary for underrepresented artists, celebrating diversity and giving them a platform to share their stories. James also launched initiatives to support aspiring artists from marginalized communities, offering grants, mentorship, and exhibition opportunities. His gallery quickly became a cultural hub, known for its vibrant energy and commitment to social change. Unfinished business. Despite his meteoric rise, James couldn't shake the memory of the humiliation he'd endured at Whitman Gallery. Every time he saw his work celebrated, he remembered the sting of Mr. Whitman's words, "Art isn't for everyone." One evening, as he stood in his gallery after a successful exhibition, James confided in Claudia. "I'm grateful for everything," he said, "but a part of me still feels the need to confront what happened that day at Whitman Gallery." Claudia, who had become both a mentor and a friend, nodded knowingly. "Success is the best revenge," she said. "But sometimes, addressing the past directly can be just as powerful." Encouraged by Claudia, James began to devise a plan. He didn't want revenge in the traditional sense, his goal was to turn a moment of pain into an opportunity for transformation. James knew he had the resources and influence to make an impact, and the next chapter of his journey would be about more than his art. It would be about rewriting the narrative, not just for himself, but for all those who had ever been dismissed, underestimated, or mocked. What James didn't realize yet was that his plan would not only reshape his life, but also leave a lasting mark on the very gallery that once turned him away. The return. The opportunity. Years passed, and the art world shifted dramatically. New voices, fresh perspectives, and diverse creators began reshaping the landscape. While James flourished, Mr. Whitman's gallery, once a beacon of exclusivity and prestige, was losing relevance. Whitman Gallery had become a relic of the past. Its reluctance to adapt to changing trends, combined with Mr. Whitman's rigid vision and poor financial decisions, led to dwindling sales and diminishing clientele. Rumors of the gallery's financial struggles began circulating among art circles. James, now firmly established as an influential figure in the industry, heard about Whitman Gallery's plight from an associate. A part of James felt vindicated. The same gallery that had dismissed him was now facing the consequences of its exclusivity and short-sightedness. But rather than celebrate Whitman's downfall, James saw an opportunity, a chance to take control of the very institution that once belittled him and turn it into something meaningful. The offer. James devised a plan. He would purchase Whitman Gallery and transform it into a space that celebrated diversity, inclusivity, and innovation. However, he wanted to make the transaction on his terms. Using an alias, James had his legal team approach Mr. Whitman with an offer. The offer was generous, enough to resolve Whitman's debts and ensure a smooth sale. Desperate to keep the gallery afloat, Mr. Whitman readily agreed without questioning the identity of the buyer. Negotiations were swift, with Mr. Whitman eager to offload the gallery and avoid further embarrassment. The closing date was set, and a signing ceremony was planned to mark the transfer of ownership. The revelation. On the day of the signing ceremony, Mr. Whitman entered the gallery's grand office, now stripped of its former luster. He was visibly weary, the stress of financial ruin etched into his face. The buyer, he was told, was a prominent figure in the art world who wished to remain anonymous until the formalities were complete. As the documents were signed, Mr. Whitman smiled faintly, relieved to be free of the burden. "Thank you," he said to the buyer's representative. "I hope whoever takes over can restore this place to its former glory." The representative gestured toward the doorway. "Actually, Mr. Whitman, the new owner is here to speak with you directly." Whitman turned, and his expression froze as James Carter stepped into the room. Dressed sharply and exuding quiet confidence, James met Whitman's stunned gaze with a calm smile. "Mr. Whitman," James said, extending his hand. "It's been a long time." For a moment, Whitman was speechless. Recognition flickered in his eyes as he recalled the young artist he had mocked years ago. "You?" he stammered. "You're the buyer?" "Yes," James said simply. "I've admired this space for a long time. It's an iconic location, and I believe it has untapped potential I intend to bring to life." Whitman's face reddened as he grappled with the realization. The very man he had dismissed as unworthy was now the owner of his gallery. James continued, his tone composed but firm. "I don't harbor ill will, Mr. Whitman. In fact, I see this as an opportunity, for both of us. You'll have a chance to step away gracefully, and I'll transform this gallery into a place where art is celebrated in all its forms." Whitman nodded stiffly, too overwhelmed to respond. The humiliation was undeniable, but James' grace left no room for bitterness. As the ceremony concluded, James took a moment to walk through the gallery's halls. It was a symbolic victory, not just for him, but for every artist who had ever been dismissed or excluded. From that day forward, Whitman Gallery would no longer be a space of exclusion. Under James' ownership, it would become a beacon of hope, creativity, and transformation, a testament to the power of resilience and vision. A new vision. Transformation. James wasted no time reimagining the gallery's potential. Whitman Gallery, once a symbol of exclusivity and elitism, underwent a complete transformation under its new name, the Phoenix Gallery. The name symbolized rebirth, a nod to James' journey and the stories of countless others rising from adversity. The sterile white walls were replaced with vibrant murals created by emerging artists from diverse backgrounds. The gallery's main hall was divided into themed spaces, each highlighting underrepresented voices, artists of color, LGBTQ+ creators, indigenous art, and works from communities often overlooked by mainstream galleries. James implemented programs to support young talent. He launched an artist residency program that provided mentorship, studio space, and funding. Workshops and public talks were hosted regularly, offering aspiring artists insights into the art world and encouraging dialogue between creators and audiences. The gallery became more than a place to display art, it became a thriving community. Visitors came not just to admire the work, but to engage with the stories behind it. The Phoenix Gallery was alive with creativity, its halls echoing with laughter, discussions, and the sound of brushes on canvas. Public reaction. The transformation of the gallery, coupled with James' remarkable journey, quickly captured the public's imagination. News outlets, magazines, and social media platforms shared the story of the Phoenix Gallery, celebrating its mission of inclusivity and its inspiring founder. The art world, notorious for its rigid hierarchies, was shaken. Critics and commentators praised James for challenging the status quo and sparking much-needed conversations about equality and representation in the arts. Collectors and patrons flocked to the gallery, not just for the stunning art, but for the chance to support a movement that celebrated diversity and broke down barriers. The gallery's success became a blueprint for others, inspiring similar transformations in art spaces around the world. James, however, remained grounded. He was grateful for the recognition but focused on his mission, ensuring that the Phoenix Gallery remained a space where art could thrive, unburdened by prejudice or exclusion. Mr. Whitman's reflection. Though James had left the past behind, Mr. Whitman couldn't shake the weight of his mistakes. The sale of the gallery had been a humbling experience, but seeing its transformation into the Phoenix Gallery forced him to confront his biases and the role they had played in his downfall. When James invited Mr. Whitman to the gallery's grand reopening, it took Whitman days to decide whether to attend. Ultimately, he arrived, unsure of what to expect. The gallery was unrecognizable. The vibrant energy, the diversity of the crowd, and the sheer talent on display left Whitman in awe. He wandered through the halls, marveling at the art and the stories it told. When he saw James, Whitman hesitated, then approached him. "Mr. Carter," he began, his voice low and hesitant. "I owe you an apology. What I said to you years ago, it was wrong. I let my biases cloud my judgment, and I didn't see the brilliance in your work. Seeing what you've done here, it's extraordinary." James regarded him with a calm expression. "Thank you for saying that, Mr. Whitman," he replied. "We all have the capacity to grow and change. I hope this gallery inspires you, as much as it does everyone else who walks through these doors." Whitman nodded, his shame evident. He stayed for the rest of the evening, quietly observing the vibrant community James had built. For the first time, he began to understand the importance of inclusivity and the richness it brought to the art world. As he left, Whitman made a vow to learn from his mistakes and use his experience to support and uplift artists who, like James, deserve to be seen and heard. Legacy. Empowering the next generation. With the Phoenix Gallery thriving as a hub of inclusivity and artistic expression, James sought to deepen his impact on the art world. Recognizing the systemic barriers that often prevented talented individuals from pursuing their passions, he launched several initiatives to empower the next generation of creators. He established the Carter Scholarship Fund, which provided financial assistance to aspiring artists from marginalized communities. The scholarships covered tuition for art schools, grants for supplies, and even travel expenses for students to attend exhibitions and workshops worldwide. James also partnered with universities and art institutions to create mentorship programs, connecting young artists with established figures in the industry. Through these programs, emerging creators gained invaluable guidance, exposure, and opportunities to showcase their work on global platforms. The initiatives went beyond financial support, they cultivated a sense of belonging and confidence in a field that often felt inaccessible to those on the outside. The impact was immediate and profound, with dozens of scholarship recipients finding success and recognition within just a few years. The art world revolution. As the Phoenix Gallery continued to flourish, it drew international attention. Media outlets dubbed it the heart of a new art renaissance, celebrating its role in reshaping the industry's standards. Other galleries began to follow James' lead, incorporating diverse voices into their collections and prioritizing inclusivity in their operations. The ripple effect was undeniable. Art competitions revised their criteria to ensure fairness, auction houses amplified the work of underrepresented artists, and educational institutions updated their curriculums to celebrate a broader range of artistic traditions. James' story became a symbol of hope and transformation. He was invited to speak at conferences, summits, and TED Talks, where he shared his journey and emphasized the importance of breaking down barriers in creative industries. Collectors and patrons who had once overlooked underrepresented artists began to take notice, driving a surge in demand for diverse and meaningful art. The industry, once rigid and exclusive, began to evolve into a space where anyone with talent and vision could find a platform. Final reflection. One quiet evening, after the gallery had closed for the day, James found himself alone in the main hall. The walls were adorned with works that told powerful stories of resilience, hope, and humanity. Each piece represented a journey, a voice that had been heard because of the space he had created. James walked to a small room at the back of the gallery, a space he had always reserved for personal reflection. Inside was a single, unadorned wall, illuminated by a soft, warm light. In his hands, he held a framed painting, the first piece of art he had ever created. The painting was simple but deeply personal, depicting a young boy standing in a field of sunflowers, gazing at the sky with wonder. It was a reminder of where he had started, a symbol of the dreams he had nurtured through countless hardships. With steady hands, James hung the painting on the wall, stepping back to admire it. In that moment, he felt a profound sense of peace. He thought of the journey that had brought him here, the rejection, the perseverance, the people who had believed in him, and the countless lives he had touched. The gallery wasn't just a culmination of his dreams, it was a living, breathing legacy that would outlast him. As he stood there, a smile spread across his face. James Carter had not only changed his own life but had reshaped an entire industry, proving that art was for everyone, and that the most meaningful creations often come from the humblest beginnings. The story ended with James switching off the lights in the gallery, leaving the faint glow of his first painting as a testament to the power of vision, resilience, and change. Passing the torch. A new generation takes the stage. Years passed, and the Phoenix Gallery continued to thrive as a global symbol of inclusivity and artistic innovation. James, now in his late 60s, felt a growing desire to ensure the gallery's legacy would endure beyond his lifetime. He began identifying young leaders among the artists, curators, and staff who had grown with the gallery. One such individual was Amara Johnson, a talented painter and former Carter Scholarship recipient. Amara's journey mirrored James in many ways. She had overcome significant adversity to become a recognized artist and advocate for equity in the arts. James saw in Amara not just talent but the same fire and vision that had driven him. Over the next few years, he mentored her closely, teaching her the intricacies of running the gallery and sharing the values that had guided its success. A farewell celebration. When the time came to formally pass the torch, James organized a grand celebration at the Phoenix Gallery. The event was a retrospective of his career and the gallery's journey, featuring artwork from the hundreds of artists who had found their voice through its programs. Attendees included collectors, critics, former scholarship recipients, and even some of James' early supporters like Claudia Reynolds. It was an emotional evening filled with speeches, performances, and heartfelt tributes. In his farewell address, James spoke with humility and gratitude. "This gallery was born from a dream," he said, "but it grew because of all of you. The Phoenix isn't just a building, it's a movement, a promise that art belongs to everyone. And I know it's in good hands as we move forward." James then invited Amara to the stage, officially naming her as the new director of the Phoenix Gallery. The room erupted in applause, and Amara, overwhelmed with emotion, promised to honor James' legacy while forging her own path. A life well lived. In the years that followed, James embraced a quieter life. He spent his days painting in his home studio, traveling to visit galleries inspired by his work, and mentoring young artists on a more personal level. He remained connected to the Phoenix Gallery, occasionally appearing at exhibitions and events, but his role became that of a guiding figure rather than an active leader. James also published a memoir, From Canvas to Change, recounting his journey from a struggling artist to an industry trailblazer. The book became a bestseller, inspiring countless readers to pursue their dreams despite the odds. The final painting. In his last years, James worked on a painting he called Legacy. It was his most ambitious piece yet, a sprawling, colorful depiction of interconnected hands lifting one another, surrounded by symbols of art, love, and resilience. The painting was unveiled at the Phoenix Gallery's 25th anniversary celebration and became the centerpiece of the gallery's permanent collection. A new beginning. When James passed away peacefully at the age of 82, tributes poured in from around the world. Artists, collectors, and everyday admirers shared stories of how his work and vision had touched their lives. Amara ensured his memory lived on, continuing to expand the gallery's mission and programs. Under her leadership, the Phoenix Gallery reached even greater heights, solidifying its place as a global institution for art and social change. The Enduring Flame. The story concluded with the Phoenix Gallery's annual celebration, where James' original painting, The Boy in the Field of Sunflowers, remained on display. Visitors paused to admire it, often unaware of its creator's humble beginnings, but always moved by its quiet beauty. The gallery stood as a beacon of hope, proof that a single vision could ignite a revolution, and that the legacy of one person could light the path for countless others to follow.